All right, let's talk about something we've all wondered about. What's the secret sauce that makes some people just click? Today, we are digging deep into two of the biggest pieces of that puzzle, your IQ and your temperament. I mean, these are the big questions, right? Are we just born with a certain amount of brain power and a personality that's locked in for life? Or can we actually change our own code? Let's dive in, and we're going to start with probably the most famous and, let's be honest, the most controversial measure of smarts out there, the IQ test. So, first up, IQ, the intelligence quotient. It's one of the most studied and, yeah, most debated ideas in all of psychology. But what is it really trying to measure? Well, at its heart, most IQ tests are trying to get at this thing called G, or general intelligence. The best way to think about it is like your brain's central processing unit, its CPU. It's the single core ability that helps you tackle all sorts of problems, whether it's a tricky math equation or figuring out a word puzzle. Okay, but here's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Does having a high IQ score actually mean you're going to be more successful out there in the real world? Let's see what the data tells us. When it comes to school, wow, the connection is incredibly clear. One study found that IQ was the single biggest predictor of academic skills. Get this, it accounted for about 35% of a child's reading ability and 22% of their math skills. So the short version is, yeah, a higher IQ generally does mean better grades.
But this is where things get weird. A huge study, we're talking over 30,000 students in France, found a totally unexpected twist. For the most gifted kids, the ones with the highest potential, having parents with more education was actually linked to slightly lower grades. It's a total head-scratcher that researchers are still trying to figure out.
And all of this leads us to a really crucial question. If IQ seems to be so important, are we just stuck with the one we're born with? For a long, long time, the answer was pretty much thought to be yes. But a lot of new research is suggesting that our intelligence really isn't set in stone. So what can we actually do to give our brain power a little boost? A really fascinating review looked at a bunch of different ways people have tried to boost IQ, and they found some interesting stuff. Things like multivitamins or iodine supplements, yeah, they can help, but really only if a child has a deficiency to begin with. Those brain training games you see everywhere, the results were pretty small and maybe not even that reliable. But there was one thing that really, really stood out from the pack. 4 points. Yep, you heard that right. A major analysis found that consistently learning and practicing a musical instrument can boost a child's IQ by an average of 4 points. That is a powerful reminder that with the right kind of effort, we can literally get smarter. So the big takeaway from all this is that while, yeah, our genes definitely play a part, our brains are not these fixed things. With the right environment, with the right kind of training, we can genuinely improve our cognitive skills. But hey, being a genius is only half the battle, right? Now let's flip the coin over and look at the other major part of this equation, our temperament, our built-in emotional style. Now, it is really important to get the difference between temperament and personality. The best analogy is a building. Think of your temperament as the foundation. It's the raw material, the stuff you're born with. Your personality, on the other hand, is the actual building you construct on top of that foundation over your entire life. So when psychologists look at a kid's temperament, they usually zero in on 3 core ingredients. First, you've got surgency, which is basically how energetic and outgoing a kid is. Then there's negative affectivity, which is about the tendency to feel things like anger or sadness. And finally, you have effortful control, which is all about self-regulation.
So, surgency. We all know this kid. This is the kid who is just always on the move. This quote from a behavioral questionnaire just nails it. This is the child who still has energy to burn, even when it's way past bedtime.
Next up is negative affectivity. This is that tendency to get frustrated or upset pretty easily. And we have all seen this in action, right? That complete meltdown when a favorite toy goes missing. And finally, there's effortful control. And honestly, this one is kind of like a superpower. It's the ability to focus, to tune out all the distractions, to resist temptation, and to just stick with something, even when it gets a little boring. So just like we did with IQ, we have to ask the same question here. Are we just born with a certain temperament, or does our environment, especially our parents, get a say in the matter? And the answer is a huge, resounding no. It doesn't happen in a vacuum at all. It's a two-way street. A child's natural temperament absolutely affects how their parents treat them, and then that parenting style turns around and helps shape the child's developing personality. This is a perfect example of how that works. Imagine a child who is naturally more irritable. That can be stressful for parents, right? And it might lead them to be a little inconsistent with discipline. Well, that inconsistency can actually make the child more irritable, which then makes it even harder for the parents to be consistent. You see, it's this vicious cycle where temperament and parenting just keep feeding off each other.
Okay, so we've looked at brain power, our IQ, and we've looked at our emotional style, our temperament. So now, let's put them head to head in the ultimate showdown. When it comes to things like getting good grades, what's more important, being brilliant or being a hard worker? Well, one study of nearly 800 students found a really clear winner, IQ. It was the single strongest predictor of high school grades. Not a huge surprise there. But right on its heels was the personality trait of conscientiousness, which is basically just the grown-up version of effortful control. So the takeaway is huge. It's not just about how smart you are. It's also about how hard you're willing to work. So where does all this leave us? We've learned that our intelligence can actually be improved. We've seen that our temperament can be shaped by our experiences. And that changes everything. It means the real question isn't about who's born the smartest or the best behaved. The real question is this: how do we build a world, build schools, build homes that help every single person reach their absolute full potential?